Welcome to Train Signal. You're watching a lesson on IPv6 fundamentals. Now in this lesson, I want to tell you that we're going to focus on the word fundamentals, meaning this is going to be a very high-level overview of IP version 6. And the reason why is because even though certain experts thought that IP version 6 was where we were going to be as far back as 5, I suppose some maybe even thought as far back as 10 years ago, even right now today, in 2012, because that's where I am right now as I'm making this for you, we are not using IPv6 as heavily as we're still using IPv4. Okay, so I just want you to have the basic understanding of what this thing is. Now to get things started, let's talk about why we even created IPv6. And the reason is because there are some disadvantages to using IP version 4. And the first one, and not only is it the first one, but it's the most obvious one that people talk about all the time, and that is that there's not enough IP addresses with IP version 4. Now, in some of the other lessons that I've gone through, we've talked about how many addresses are available, and if you take IPv4 and realize that it's a 32-bit binary number, you know that there's approximately 4 billion different combinations. You might think to yourself, wow, 4 billion, how is that not enough? Well, keep in mind that in today's world, between the smartphones and the laptops and the iPads and the desktops and everything that has an IP address, we're running out. We also saw in some of those previous lessons that we have wasted IP addresses, right? When we talked about class full IP addressing, where we had our A, B, and C classes, where we saw how, there were companies that would tie up 65,000 IP addresses when they only needed, just a couple thousand. So we were running out of IP addresses. Now, I will tell you that that was resolved to some extent by using other methods like private IP addressing and NAT, network address translation. But many feel that that's still not good enough, and we're going to need more. But what else, do we have in the way of problems? Well, with IPv4, we have very cluttered internet routing tables. And I'm not going to go into the detail of how exactly they're cluttered, but I can tell you that the way it was designed, it makes for the possibility of this extreme clutter. We talked about it briefly, again, when we talked about classful IP addressing in another lesson, when we talked about that same company, instead of wasting thousands and thousands of IP addresses, maybe that one company took a bunch of smaller ranges and had cluttered routing tables. IPv4 is also, and this one, again, you might scratch your head and say, really? It's difficult to configure. Yes, believe it or not, even though we may look at it as being a pretty simple process, overall, it is considered to be difficult relative to some other options that are available. And then here's another semi-big one, and that is that IPv4 security is optional. Okay, meaning we have the option of having completely unsecured communication with IPv4, and with that unsecured communication, well, that causes problems. Now, we have the ability to secure and secure heavily our IPv4 traffic. It's just that not everybody is doing it. So that's kind of the reason why we created IPv6, because we have all these disadvantages that come with IPv4. So with that, how about we move on to talking about some of the solutions that IPv6 has given us. And I will tell you that there are 4 solutions, and they are going to map directly to the 4 disadvantages that we just talked about. The first one would be plenty of addresses. With IPv6, we have plenty of addresses. As a matter of fact, the number is so big, I don't even know how to pronounce it. And so the way I have it illustrated here is it's 3.4 times 10 to the 38th power. Yeah, it's big. Now that said, I want you to keep one thing in mind. Even though that number might seem so huge we would never run out, that's pretty much what was thought of IPv4 back when it was created. Back then, we thought that those 4 billion addresses, we would never use that up. But we did. So keep in mind that any solution that says, oh, this is a number bigger than you'll ever need, yeah, not always the case, right? We see that even with data storage, right? Back when gigabytes came out, we were like, whoa, gigabytes. Now a gigabyte's nothing. Now it's all about the terabytes. Pretty soon terabytes will be nothing. But anyway, let's go on to the next solution. The next solution I have here is that IPv6 provides for a more simplified internet routing table. Okay, and it really, I shouldn't even say that as singular. There are many internet routing tables out there, and they are simplified. Now, this is one of those that you're just going to have to kind of take my word for it. It would be a whole separate lesson in itself to try to go out and explain the intricacies of those routing tables out on the internet. So I don't want you to worry about that right now. This is just about fundamentals, but I can tell you that that is one of the issues that was addressed with IPv6. We also now have easier, is really what I'm going to say, easier and more automated configuration. Even though we have figured out a way to make IPv4 mostly automated through the use of things like DHCP and APIPA, I can tell you that IPv6 is even more automated and even easier to configure. Okay, so that issue has been addressed as well. And the last item when it comes to solutions that IPv6 provided is that now security is mandatory. It is required. It's not an option anymore. If you're communicating via IPv6, something called IPsec is mandatory and must be used. So what that means is all IPv6 communication is secure. So those are kind of the reasons why IPv6 was implemented in the first place. So let's take a look at exactly what an IPv6 address looks like and see how it's made up. So the first thing that you need to know about an IPv6 address is that it is 128 bits long. Meaning if we go back to binary, just like we did with IPv4, where that was a 32-bit binary number, IPv6 is a 128-bit binary number, which looks kind of something like this. It's so long, it took me 3 rows of ones and zeros to get it on the screen. And that is not something that any human is realistically going to be able to work with. So what we do next is we take that 128 bits and we break it down into 16-bit segments. And again, just to compare, with IPv4, we broke the 32 bits down into 8-bit segments. Okay, so in this case, we're breaking it down into 16-bit segments, and then we display them in hexadecimal. Okay, and that would be base 16, and it looks something like this. Okay, so you'll see that we have the 8 16-bit sections represented in hexadecimal format, and since we're using base 16, that means that there are 16 possible characters that can be used, and they are represented by 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then because we don't have any single-digit numbers beyond there, the last 6 are represented by A, B, C, D, E, and F. Okay, so it can be anywhere from a number 0 all the way through the letter F. And then each of those 16-bit segments is divided with a colon, as opposed to with IPv4, we divided it with dots. But when you take a look at this number here, it's still, just this huge monstrosity of a thing that most humans aren't really going to be able to work with. So what we do next is we can simplify by suppressing any leading zeros. Okay, so now we've broken it down to looking like this, where you'll notice in the second grouping, we had 4 zeros. We don't need 4 zeros to represent that. We can just say single zero. And you see that in the second, third, and fourth block of numbers. In the next block, you'll see we had 0, 5, EE. Well, again, we don't need the 0. We can just say that's 5 EE. The next block, we have 0, 0, FF. Just break that down to FF. And the next block, we have 0, 2, 3, 8. That becomes 2, 3, 8. Now, you'll notice that in the first block, FE80, There was no leading 0. It started with an F, so we left it alone. And in the last block, it was 47B1, where again, there's no leading 0, so it had to still be 47B1. Now, if that's still not condensed enough, there's one more trick that we can do, and that is that we can further compress this IP address by expressing a single contiguous set of 0 blocks represented with just a double colon. And it looks something like this. We have the 3 blocks in a row, right? The second, third, and fourth blocks that are all just straight zeros. We can represent all those zeros with a double colon. Anywhere you see that double colon, you know that you can just plug in blocks of zeros. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, how do I know how many zeros to put there? Well, again, remember, you always know that there are going to be 8 total blocks of numbers. And so looking at the screen, I see FE80, that's one block. 5EE, that's another block. FF, that's a third block. 238, that's a fourth block. And 47B1, that's a fifth block. So that means the double colon represents 8 minus 5, or 3 blocks of zeros. Now here's the thing, because there's no further that I'm going to go with this. What you see, that's as compressed as an IPv6 address is going to get. And I know that when I look at that, I don't find that to be human-friendly at all. I mean, IP addresses aren't human-friendly to begin with. That's why we use names. But at least with the IPv4 addresses, I found the 4 blocks of numbers, and those numbers are anywhere from 0 to 255, and they are in decimal, which is what humans are used to using. To be able to say 192.168.10.1, I found that, something I had to get used to, but wasn't that difficult. This is more complicated. I mean, and that's just all there is to it. This is going to be more complicated than IPv4. And we're going to have some of that extra complication because it comes with the extra sophistication, which gives us the extra solutions that IPv4 could not resolve. The good news is that most people won't ever need to truly remember an IPv6 address. The idea behind it is, first of all, it was designed to be way more dynamic than IPv4 ever was. So even as administrators, everything's going to be dynamic. You don't have to know the actual IP address of a computer. And then, of course, we still have name resolution so that the average person just works with computer names. They don't work with these IP addresses. Now, the other aspect of IPv6 addresses I want to make sure that you understand as far as the differences between how they look and how they work compared to your IPv4 addresses is kind of the types of communication is what I have listed here. You'll see that we have unicast, just like we had with IPv4, and that is a one-to-one communication, meaning one computer can transmit data that is meant specifically and explicitly for one other computer. We have multicast, which is just like IPv4, where one computer is transmitting and there are many computers that will subscribe to that transmission. And again, typically this would be multimedia, streaming audio, video, things like that. But there's a new one stuck in here called the Anycast. And I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. But before I do, I just want to point out that there's also the broadcast, which is the same, where there's one transmission and it's meant for everybody. Okay, so the one type of transmission that's different here is the Anycast. And the Anycast is what's listed as one to one of many. And this is a way that IPv6 is made to be, maybe not so much made to be, but made to participate in fault-tolerant solutions. Okay, the idea is that you have many different computers which will subscribe to a transmission, kind of like the multicast. But the transmitter, the one who is transmitting, won't transmit to all of them. It will look at that pool of subscribers and it will send the transmission to the one that is closest or most readily available. Okay, so it's kind of the idea of fault tolerance. If you think of it as you have a bunch of servers, all providing the same service, and you're a client and you want to go to one of those servers, you're going to go to one of the many that are available to you. Now, the one last thing I want to go over with you here, and I know I'm kind of working my way back up through the list now, but if we go back up to Unicast, you need to know the types of addresses that are available. Whereas with IPv4, we had public and private IP addresses. With Unicast, we have something called global addresses, and these are similar to the public addresses in IPv4. In other words, these are the addresses that are valid on the internet. The next type of address is something called a link local address, and the best way to explain or compare what a link local address is it's similar to a PIPA, automatic private IP addressing. Whereas with IPv4, if you were configured to dynamically get an IP address, but there was no DHCP server available to give you that IP address, you would automatically give yourself an IP address in the 169.254 range. That's in IPv4. Well, in IPv6, these are called link local addresses, and similar to IPv4, where you can recognize these addresses because of how they start, we have the same scenario with IPv6. You will recognize one of these automatic private IP addresses because it will start with FE80. And the last type of IPv6 address is the unique local address. And the unique local address can be best compared with the private IP addresses. Not automatic private, okay, just to be clear, right? We have a PIPA, which is the automatic private IP addressing. Now here I'm talking about just the private ranges that have been reserved for internal use only. In other words, with IPv4, we had the 10 network, and we had the 172.16 through 172.31 network, and the 192.168 range of networks. Well, in IPv6, you can recognize one of these private-only type addresses because they will begin with an FC or an FD. So those are the various types of addresses and the various types of communication that you can have with IPv6. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of this lesson, and yes, I know it was a short one and hopefully a somewhat painless one. The idea here, again, is just to make sure that you understand the high-level fundamentals of IPv6. And the reason behind this is that I need for you to be ready for when we move to this in the future and not so much worried about you being an expert in it right now. So that's it. I'll see you in the next lesson.